Aloha and welcome to Muro's Temple, the podcast, where we explore the deeper work behind our Hawaii location and online platform. I invite you to join me as we return home to your body's feminine wisdom. Hello, my friends. It feels great to be back with you here today. I'm going to be sharing about embodiment. We are currently in the middle of eclipse season. And this past weekend, I had a beautiful experience with breathwork. And the message that came through so strongly was embodiment. And embodiment has been a theme really since opening Muro's Temple, realizing how contrary to what we see in the external world, so many of us are having a hard time staying embodied. And there's so many reasons for this that we can talk about at another time. But some of the bigger reasons that I see is, one, our culture really is one, at least of the Western world, of go, and what I would call external radiance, which means you are asked to be on, quote unquote, 24/7 every day with the YouTube videos and the Instagram and content creation. And you must always be what I like to call in ovulation mode, right? Through the feminine perspective. And embodiment is returning to the cyclical nature of our being. And there's really no other way to become embodied but to come back to the cyclical nature. Because when we talk about embodiment, we naturally drop down into the earth and then expand out as far as you want to take it. For me, I'm very connected to the stars. And even within the universe and the cosmos, there are cycles and there are patterns that are inevitably in function. And so to talk about embodiment, we must first slow down and figure out, where are we not embodied in our lives? Where are we getting caught up by the external stimuli? And that is no judgment, because really this world is built on grabbing your attention. I remember one time, I don't know who it was, some leading technology person said that attention is the highest currency of this modern age. More than the dollar bill, more than any other money, attention, if you can grab somebody's attention, that is the highest currency. And so the way that my awakening started is quite interesting, because I was asked to go within and remove my attention from the external world to actually quite an extreme, which of course was not healthy. And at the time I didn't have words for it. But now it's been about a decade since that experience and since that phase of my awakening process. And I am only now just seeing the medicine that was given to me at the very beginning of this journey, which was exactly what I'm actually working on in recreating a new course for you guys about the beautiful medicine and the potency of the void and the darkness, and retracting from the world in our very own way. And this is so important at this time, because kind of bringing the conversation back around, we are in eclipse season, and even outside of that, we're at a point where time is speeding up. I know you feel that, and that is not an illusion. The way that quantum mechanics and our DNA works as the electromagnetic fields are shifting within our earth. It's simply part of the ascension process that the strand of time in our DNA begins to shift and we begin to move into quantum time. And that makes it feel like everything is happening so much faster and in the moment, which is a beautiful experience. But at the same time, as we move into that space, it's necessary for us to slow down even more. And like we'll talk about in this conversation, you need both sides of the spectrum for this whole awakening ascension process to work. I'm going to talk about the ascension and awakening process in a separate episode. So today, I'm going to talk about the 4 steps of embodiment, and specifically when working with really grounding the energy and the experiences and however it is that you want to call it, whatever it is that you're living right now. If you feel like it's speeding up, like life is asking more of you, if you are not creating a practice for yourself in your life to slow down, to bring your hands on your heart and your womb, to breathe, and to acknowledge that this process is happening, it will be very difficult for your nervous system, for your body, for your organs, for your brain and your heart field to keep up. And inevitably, there's burnout, there's dis-ease, there's things that happen with our health. So let's talk about the 4 steps of embodiment. The first one is, it starts with an expansion. So all of a sudden you see something, you see a podcast or a video or a course, or something happens in front of you, or you have a conversation. Something gives you a spark and automatically your body is lit up. You're like, oh my God, this feels right. Whether it's for you to take an action or a synchronicity, something pulls you towards that direction. This is the moment of expansion. Your cells are invigorated. Things are happening within your body. Perhaps your nervous system or your heart rate starts to increase, or there's a visceral shift in your physical reality or your emotional reality. This is the moment of expansion. Then comes the moment of integration. Integration happens after we commit to the thing, to the conversation, to the invitation, and we take focused action on that hit of expansion intuition that we just got. The integration part is where we can often run away or numb ourselves. We tend to go back, or we tend to fall into the looping mechanisms that we've been programmed with, if we've picked it up in our lifetime or it's been handed down through generations. What happens there is that you actually don't integrate. So your body feels a yes, that's the expansion, and the integration part, you say yes, you commit, but for some reason you can't follow through. This is where the integration falls short. But this is also your body telling you that it's not able to integrate. And of course, there's no judgment on whether you can fully integrate or not, if you can stop yourself from repeating old behaviors and thought patterns or not. But the integration point is really important for you to notice yourself. Are you able to move through and follow through fully with that first expansive hit that you received? This is really important because this tells you, the integration part, how moldable and how willing am I to step out of my comfort zone and do something. So if you tend to be the person that can't follow through or for some reason falls back on behaviors, it's just something for you to be aware of. And if you're the person who does integrate properly, then you move on to the next step, which is grounding. And so grounding is really interesting because we think that grounding means putting your feet on the ground. And that's a huge part of it. Yes, being out in nature and placing your feet and your hands on the ground and receiving sunlight is absolutely a part of grounding. The issue becomes when we think that's the only part of grounding and we just frolic around in nature and say that we're grounding and it's so healthy for us. And what happens is you're actually not grounding. And this is where this conversation gets really interesting. And I think that it's important for us to take a little pause here, because as the light quotient, meaning as we have more light coming onto this planet and hitting the DNA, the cellular structures, the grid lines of the earth, whatever it is that you resonate with, as intelligence, light comes into the earth, it's not necessarily grounded just because we're outside. I know many people that live on land and are ungrounded. And I know many people that live in cities and are beyond grounded in their soul and their essence. So what happens is when there's a lot of light that comes onto the planet, like I had mentioned earlier, you need both sides of the spectrum. So we think everyone is elevating in consciousness, but in reality, you must have both sides. And what's happening is that, yes, there's an increase in consciousness, and there's also an increase in false light and false consciousness. And so what that means is that we just take on old belief systems, or we take on something that we read and we just apply it without any wisdom. So if you've ever heard, again, this is no judgment, this is just to bring light on the subject. If you've ever heard somebody who's really young and they're just spitting out, life wisdom, and they're maybe living in Bali and they have no responsibility, and they're teaching you about how to live in love and light, and they're about 20 years old. This is what I'm talking about in terms of not grounding. Just because this person is living outdoors in nature, it actually doesn't mean anything. It means that it's disembodied wisdom. I hope that this is landing, because it's really important as the light quotient increases on this planet to begin to have more discernment as to what looks and feels right in our bodies, because we're kind of, and maybe I'm going on a rant now, but we're creating this expectation that we should all be living outdoors, barefoot on land, playing and frolicking with, cows and chickens. And let me tell you, I love doing that. I love it. It's amazing. But that doesn't mean that I'm embodied in my wisdom just because I'm doing that. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But that's not the definition of it. And to be able to discern that when there are people left and right spitting out spiritual jargon is just really important. And I'm pretty passionate about this because I am seeing how I, in my own journey, was not able to ground. And this is why it's been such a process for me to understand, what does it actually mean to ground these high frequencies into our bodies? So what happened to me was, of course, we lived in Hawaii, and I was on the land, and I was still very much in my soul body and experiencing the ethers until I learned how to work with energy, and not only how to work with energy, but how to move and ground and be with energy in my body in connection to the earth, which is a much deeper awareness. And it requires you to be inside your body with all that you are. And it took me quite a while to understand that. And now I can live not feet on ground and still feel very grounded, because ultimately, again, it's not about feet on ground. And I remember believing, when I used to live a long time ago in New York City, I used to believe, like, if my feet are not on the ground, like, I am sick because I'm not grounded. In reality, it was my misunderstanding of what it means to embody these incoming frequencies. So, long story short, grounding can look different for every person, and it's really a journey of going within and understanding that the grounding starts from the inside out, not from the outside in. Okay. And then the last part of embodiment is contraction. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite parts, because contraction to me represents what we would call in cyclical living, in a menstrual cycle, the bleed. And if any of you have followed my work, you know that entering the cosmic temple or receiving the magic from every cycle, these are the things that I call the moment of menstruation, the moment of stepping into our caves, the moment of closing in on ourselves and having some time to go within. And you know what? I don't always have that luxury. Just because I'm on my period doesn't mean I have 4 or 5 days off. And I noticed a big difference when I don't honor that time. But let's just step away from that specific category of menstrual cycle and come back to embodiment. So remember that we talked about initially, embodiment starts with expansion. So there's something to embody. Something gives you a hit. Something lights you up. Something bigger than you, a desire, a passion, an intuitive hit, a synchronicity, finds its way to you. This is bigger than you energetically. You light up. You then say yes or no. And if you say yes, your responsibility is to integrate that experience. You follow through that experience, whether it's a conversation, it's a course, it's a session, whatever it is that's supposed to light you up. Maybe it's a new job. You're following through. Once you're in that process, you are now grounding that experience. You're grounding it in your body by being fully present, by going within, by embodying and becoming one with that experience, that new job, that new course, the session, the new passion, the new hobby. You become one with it. You ground and merge with it. And now the last part is coming back in. This, I believe, if this does not happen, we actually cannot embody the contraction. So just like this initial hit, the expansion that found its way to you was bigger than you. That's why it lit you up. The contraction now is a way for you to come back into the center of the center of the center of your own universe, your own mind, body field, and collapse that energy in a sense. And in this culture that we are so used to, how I started this podcast earlier, which is go, 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 be external. Being able to contract from the world is almost looked down upon. It's almost shamed on. And if you don't properly contract, the integration process is not complete. If you don't actually come back inside and retract from the experience, the XYZ that you initially followed through with and became one with. And the opposite would be consistently just finding the next expansion. So if you're finding yourself, you just want more, more, more. You're constantly like, literally wanting to grow more, more, more all the time. If you've ever had an experience where you perhaps take a course or have a conversation, it's super enlightening and it's super expansive and it's, oh my God, you're completely lit up. You will notice that it takes some time to bring it all back in. And if you don't pull away from the external stimuli, what happens is something else will grab your attention, and that thing that you just experienced will just erase itself. And so this is what's happening in this world today, is that we're so on the go with information and experiences and wisdom being spit at us left and right, that we don't actually integrate it. And so we think if we could just listen to more information or just have more, we'll just become that living wisdom. And that turns into false light. That's the essence of false light. It's actually not embodied. And when I had this experience this weekend with the breath work and with Gaia, I felt deep grief, because it really does take courage to say, you know what? I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to take a day. I'm going to take as long as I need to take this in, to take this thing in. Now, the other side of that is, of course, the other extreme, which is people will fall into the I'm integrating stage. If you've ever heard of that, like, oh, I'm still integrating that thing that happened last week. Oh my God, last month was insane. I'm still integrating. Now that is like, of course, the opposite extreme and also not healthy, because if it's taking you that long, something is happening where one of those steps, perhaps the grounding, is not actually happening. And you think just by putting your feet on the ground, you're going to ground the information or experience, but that's not actually it. There's no inner alchemy that's happening. So, of course, any extreme is out of balance. But coming back to the final part of contraction, which is the natural part of life, where we get to embody the wisdom and the magic and the medicine of that thing that initially lit us up. And we really actually alchemize that experience and we become that experience, so that then from that place, when we feel ready, it can be shared with others. And contraction, of course, is just as important as expansion. You literally cannot have one without the other. So in this time where we're consistently expanding our awareness and our consciousness, and there's so many avenues to really explore the multidimensionality of this world and this life, we are not giving ourselves enough time to slow back down and bring it back in and embody that wisdom in ourselves, in our organs, in our fascia. And so this is why I've been guided. I used to have a course on a 3-day fast because my body is very aligned to stargates and portals. And that means when there's an acceleration of light that comes on to this planet, our cells and our DNA feel it. And my body, my entire body, can viscerally have reactions to these portals and gateways. And so for a long time, I led 3-day fasts experiences until I really got into the deeper wisdom of the feminine. And I realized I don't always want to fast. But I still want to be in reverence to these portals and these gateways, and also honor the fact that I am fully 100% committed to the expansion and evolution of my consciousness. And that requires me, without a shadow of a doubt, to be fully committed to the contraction stage. And so there's a new course that I'm working on, which I'm really excited about, and I'll be launching that soon. I'll be sharing more details with you soon, but we'll be working together through the solstice and many more portals to come, because the portals are coming in consistently now. Before, I remember when this process first happened, they would happen every, like, kind of sporadically would feel. And now they're just consistent. And there's a few podcast episodes, if this is something that's new for you in terms of gateways and portals and fasting and what that means, definitely go back and check it out. But it's a real thing. And as we carry more light in our bodies and we really commit to this process of expanding our consciousness at some point or another, because we are so connected to the stars and the universe, it's inevitable that you will feel these portals. Most people will feel them because there's a speed up in their life. Big changes happen at this time. And it's really supportive if you can be aware of this and work with it, as opposed to it's kind of like a meme where somebody just opens a door and they don't know that there's a hurricane inside, and they just you just get hit with the biggest wind of, wind and water, and there's a palm tree that's coming your way to hit you and knock you out. Like, that's what an energetic storm can feel like. And we just had a blackout energetically for about 3 days, which can really take a toll on our emotions, on our bodies, on our relationships. So as we bring more awareness to this, we realize, wait a minute, my cells are made of water. I'm also made of stardust, and NASA has proven this. Maybe there's something here. So anyway, I'll be sharing more about this new course coming out, but I hope this has helped you a little bit in terms of what embodiment means, and just kind of taking the conversation a little bit deeper beyond just, I'm going to go outside and put my feet on the ground and just expect to be completely over or have completely integrated whatever it is that I just experienced. Okay, my loves, I will speak to you soon, and until next time, mwah. Mahalo for being here with me today. And as usual, if you'd like to learn more about what we do at our Hawaii location or online, explore the courses, the mentorship, or the events, go to www.murosetemple.com. See you soon.